We need to start the session. Leaders Forum Session 2. The stage was set by the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, on Future of Mobility, 7 Cs, in the recently held MOVE Summit. To moderate this session, I would like to invite Mr. Shumantra Baroha, Executive Editor, Autocar Professional, on the dais. Let's give a big round of applause to him. I also take the honor to invite the distinguished panelist, Mr. Alexander Hegel, Director, ZF AG, Germany. Mr. Jan Oliver Roll, CTO, Executive Vice President, Bosch Limited, India. Mr. Prashant Doreswamy, Managing Director, Continental Automotive, India. Mr. Takashi Huera-san, Chief Engineer, Toyota Motor Corporation. Let's give a big round of applause to honor all our panelists. And Dr. N. Saravanan, Senior Vice President, Ashok Leyland Limited, India. Gentlemen, it's my privilege to introduce the moderator of this session, Shumantra Baroha. He's an Executive Editor, Autocar Professional, India's leading B2B magazine and portal for the automotive industry. He's a journalist for over 15 years. Shumantra Baroha is an experienced professional with a demonstrated history of working in the broadcast and print and media. Skilled in his news reporting, feature writing, editing, and storytelling, he holds a bachelor degree in English literature from Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce and certificate in master's program in mass communication from Symbiosis Institute of Mass Communication. Ladies and gentlemen, with this short note, I would like to Mr. Baroha.
Thank you very much. It's indeed a pleasure and my privilege to be the moderator of this session, which will see the participation of some key industry leaders. Indeed, very well, rightly, aptly said, it's a leaders forum. But first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me. And on behalf of Autocar Professional, I would like to welcome one and all to this conference. But at the same time, I would like to congratulate the organizers, SAE India and FISITA, for this fantastic for organizing the first ever World Automotive Congress in India. A big round of applause, please. The theme of the session, as has been said, is Future of Mobility, 7 Cs, the mantra which was given by the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the stakeholders of the mobility industry to ponder upon. The 7 Cs are common, connected, convenient, congestion-free, charged, clean, and cutting edge. And now it's my honor to introduce to you the panelists of this session. Mr. Jan O'Roll, Executive Vice President. Mr. Roll, starting in January 2017, has taken on the role of CTO and member of Board of Directors, Bosch Limited, and Regional President for Diesel Systems in India. And he has been associated with the Bosch Group since 1998, when he joined the company as production and process engineering of diesel systems. Mr. Roll graduated in 1998 as a mechanical engineer from Karlsruhe Technical University. Studying several years in France, he also holds a diploma as mechanical engineer from Grande École Ensemble in Paris. So, welcome, Roll. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Prashant Doreswamy. He's a country head, India, Continental Corporation. Mr. Doreswamy holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and master's in manufacturing engineering and technology from Bangalore University, master's diploma in business administration from Symbiosis University. Mr. Doreswamy joined Continental in 2017 and brings with him about 25 years of automotive and manufacturing industry experience. So welcome once again, Mr. Doreswamy, to the session. It's my pleasure to introduce another panelist, Dr. N. Saravanan, who is a Senior Vice President of Product Development at Ashok Leyland, India's second largest commercial vehicle maker. Dr. Sarvanan serves as a Senior Vice President of Product Development at Ashok Leyland and served as its Special Director of Product Development. Dr. Sarvanan joined Ashok Leyland in September 2015 and has 14 years of experience. Prior to that, he served as Strategic Planning Manager at Intel Corporation, USA. So, Dr. Sarvanan, welcome to the session. And it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Takashi Uehara, who is the Chief Engineer, Powertrain Product Planning Division at Toyota Motor Corporation. Mr. Uehara majored in hydrocarbon in chemistry in Kyoto University, and after the graduation in 1991, joined Toyota Motor Corporation and has been engaged in a wide range of research and development works, which ranges from material engineering division at TMC headquarters, research of fuel and fuel additives, influence on emission outputs, deposits of the internal combustion engines. He was also involved in the development of Formula One engines, as well as hybrid vehicle system development at the headquarters. And he is also involved in development of hybrid systems from compact car to mid-car and minivans, etc. Areas of specialization include powertrain efficiency and based on studies on engine combustion. And last but not the least, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Alexander Hagel. He's the Vice President, Car Chassis Technology Development, Business Unit at ZF Friedrichshafen. Mr. Alexander has been working with ZF for more than 2 decades. He's located at the headquarters of ZF Car Chassis Technology Division in Northern Germany. Mr. Hagel has considerable experience in chassis system development and mechatronics, especially in rear wheel steering and AKC, that is active kinematics control. So he leads a global team of around 200 engineers at ZF's engineering and testing facilities. So they are the panelists of this session of the first day here. And before we proceed, I would like to state that as has been told by many, the kind of changes, the kind of disruption that the automotive industry is going to witness over the next 5 years is perhaps much more than what the industry has seen over the last 50 years. And when we talk about the global megatrends of ACEs or CASE, depends on how one looks at it, of connected technology, autonomous, electrification and safety. But above all, the most important thing is it all comes under the umbrella of mobility. So without any further ado, I would like to invite on stage to the dais Mr. Takeshi Uehara, Chief Engineer to Toyota Motor Corporation, to share his initial remarks. He will use a PowerPoint presentation to share his thoughts with us. Thank you.
For your introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today. Now, I'd like to explain about our posture for the electrification of vehicles. Okay. First of all, I'll start with issues regarding mobility society and vehicle electrification for environment-friendly vehicles. This figure shows population and the vehicle number for next 100 years, estimated by United Nations and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. In developing regions such as Asia and Africa, population will increase 1.5 times, while the number of owned vehicles is to be 3 times in 2050, compared with 2000. The reasons why world's automotive companies are making haste for vehicle electrification are suppression of the consumption of fossil oils, early reduction of CO2, prevention of air pollution. Toyota is rolling out vehicle electrification based on the technologies fostered in the history of hybrid. Prius, the very front runner of this electrification trend in mass production vehicles was surely the Toyota Prius. This model is a good example for fuel efficiency improvement through electrification and continuous improvement of technology. Since we introduced hybrid technology into the market, sales of HEVs have been steadily increasing. The total sales of Toyota's HEVs in the world surpassed 10 million in January 2017. In Europe, today, more than 40% of the total Toyota and Lexus sales are already hybrid. And the cumulative CO2 reduction by HEV is 77 million tons up to now. Then, we compared cost performance and convenience between PHEV and BEV with these two specifications. Analyzing the cost up for any XEV technology, we need to take into account that battery cost is expected to reduce in the future. Nevertheless, the BEV's cost up is supposed to be significantly higher than the one for PHEVs. This was the case in 2017 and can be expected even in 2013. When a vehicle was driven to use electrical energy by external charging, the CO2 reduction effect depends on CO2 amount for the electricity generation is also to be considered. This graph shows a scenario of CO2 amount for electricity generation in each country. As you can see, there is a large CO2 amount gap by time and country. For example, when comparing CO2 amount of each electrified vehicle based on CO2 amount for electricity generation at the moment, there is a difference in the efficiency of the electrified vehicle for well-to-foil CO2 reduction by each country. For population of electrified vehicles, to solve the issues of battery cost and others are necessary. And also, we want to provide the suitable electrified vehicle according to each region and each time. But considering customer needs and market diversification, we quickly understand that there is more than one choice when it comes to electrified vehicle products. As for us Toyota, historically, study for vehicle electrification goes back to 1960s. Up to now, some works were held with participating in Japanese government project. And the prototype vehicle with hybrid technology combined with gas turbine was also trialed before. In recent years, Love for EV was put on public sale in 90s, and EQ, that is exhibited in this meeting over there, was also put on the market in 2012. These long-term studies on vehicle electrification come to fruit as Prius in 1997. When vehicle will be electrified, motor, battery, and PCU, these three technologies as core technologies. And also, by combination with these technologies, we can produce HEV and PHEV and BEV and also FCEVs. This is a HEV construction. So the battery and the PCU and the generator and the electric motor is connected like this. This is the case of the, This is the case of the high voltage circuit system layout for the second to fourth generation Prius, DHS2. Yes. And this is in case of PHV. and currently sold in Japan, US. This is in case of FCV. This is in case of BEV. These are main units installed on EQ. Motor is the one originally designed for our FR hybrids such as Lexus GS HB, PCs for Prius, batteries for Prius PHB. As explained, electrified vehicles' three core units are about electric motor, PCU, and battery. And the technologies regarding these units, including software for control, have been brushed up through the development of HEVs. That means all necessary technologies have been prepared for produce any kind of electrified vehicles. Level up regarding these core technologies have come down to these improvements. Cumulative sales of 12 million electrified vehicles and approximately 4,500 Toyota engineers who engage in the development of electrified vehicles testify that Toyota has enormous know-how in electrification technologies. Toyota has produced 2.4 million motors and 1.2 million batteries and inverters. In such process, Toyota has succeeded to make them much smaller and enhanced in performance. Society has been changing drastically, and customers' needs for electrified vehicles are rapidly diversifying. Each country and region has its own energy policy and takes on challenges toward global environment in a different way. Therefore, to provide various electrified vehicle technologies needed for their population. Considering usage of vehicle is also important to reduce CO2. Urbanization is proceeding throughout the world. In order to realize low carbon and smooth transportation, the needs that the urban transportation program and the mobility system which incorporate vehicles into society is rising. I believe that our approach can contribute to Prime Minister Modi's 7C concept. These pictures are demonstration project in Toyota City, Japan, which is aiming for low carbon town from the viewpoint of users, introduction of next generation vehicles, installation of charging station with solar panel, conducting experiments assuming to use personal mobility. Finally, I will conclude. So vehicle electrification is essential for solving environmental issues. To reduce CO2 and to have a sustainable society, we need vehicle electrification essentially. Environmental friendly vehicles contribute to environment only when widely used. That means we cannot rely on each government to the financial help. So third one, continuously evolve electrification technologies and accumulate market results through performance and quality. Four, Toyota's mobility concept can contribute to India PM Prime Minister Modi's 7C concept. That's all from me.
Thank you very much, Uehara-san. A very precise presentation. You may take your seat and
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I invite the next speaker to share his initial remarks, I have to admit that in my opening remarks, I mentioned the S of case as safety. It's shared, so I stand corrected on that. Prashant, over to you for your opening remarks, and may I request you to keep it brief because of the paucity of time on the theme of this session.
Good afternoon. To start with, India's today core strength is cost competitiveness. And while we are looking for the new technologies, we should not let our focus go on the cost competitiveness. Secondly, compared to other countries, India has fewer vehicles per penetration. So unlike other developed economies, our economy is not built on completely a sort of private car ownership. So we don't have that baggage. So this is a good opportunity for all of us to develop a very unique, seamless mobility ecosystem for India. Third is certainly we need some sort of a clear policy framework for all these new technologies. So this will help us in building both capabilities and capacities going forward and also align our investments. So having said this, priorities in India are a little different compared to other countries. Why do you say so? If you look at the total vehicle production for this financial or calendar year, it could be about 97 million vehicles. And for 2020, it's slated for about 102 million vehicles. And 2030, it's about 114 million vehicles. Even if you look at 2020, more than 85% of the vehicles produced globally is with powertrain, internal combustion engines, and only about 15% is electric vehicles and also some sort of hybrids. Going forward, you look at 2030, we strongly believe still it's going to be 40% internal combustion engines, about 30% of some form of hybrid, and about maximum of 30% electric vehicles. So in India, while we are looking for electrification, we also have to keep in mind this year we would be producing light vehicles of about 4.75 million vehicles, of which more than 50% of the vehicles are sold are hatchbacks or small cars. So if you try to electrify the small cars, it's going to cost much more than what a consumer can afford today. So I think as a bridge technology, a commercially viable technologies are certainly available in terms of mild hybrid electric vehicles. I think India should pursue that before we go fully into the electrification. This also doesn't require a major revamp in terms of the vehicle architecture, what 48-volt mild hybrid electric vehicle architecture provides. And this can come at a 30% cost with about 70% of the benefits of what full hybrid electric vehicles give today. In terms of connectivity, I'm sure many of the peer group companies, including OEMs, they are working on implementing some sort of data platforms. This is in order to develop applications to make use of the data, what's available today, so that you can make the vehicles more safer, convenient, and also efficient. For example, vehicles can become both sort of transmitter and receiver of data. So this data continuously helps both drivers and vehicle electronics with the real-time data, which helps in efficient running of the vehicle. The other example I would like to give is Continental in working with Singapore government in order to optimize the parking space. There's something called Park and Go app, which allows you to display the availability of parking spaces and also allows you to book in advance parking space. So this helps in optimizing the parking space. So while we are looking for newer technologies, certainly it requires a lot of infrastructure also. So we have to be mindful of this. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Prashant. Jan, if I may ask you to share your thoughts on the future of mobility around the 7 Cs.
Thank you and welcome to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, to this hour of the day. Thank you for staying with us. I hope we make this as interesting for you as possible. So the Prime Minister, when he was, the Honorable Prime Minister, when he was stating his first remarks to the future of mobility, he was saying something like, better mobility equals better air quality equals better jobs equals better quality of life. And to all of you young engineers here in the next 2 days, I think this is a perfect purpose to work on, be it now an ICE, be it a hybrid, electrified or fuel cell vehicle. I start with the first C, which might have been the last one, so which is the cutting edge, and I add cutting edge technology, because finally it's technology that is changing life, and all the business models that might be nice, they're just building on that technology. And of course, Bosch is a technology company, and we are spending roughly 8 to 10% of our balance sheet annually for engineering, so for research. And while Brian was speaking about a Vision Zero, we have something similar, which is stress-free, emission-free, and accident-free driving. So the 7 Cs, they work perfectly for the purpose of our company. And with regards to electric vehicles, I'm 20 years with the company. In the last 10 years, this company has spent roughly 400 million annually in the development of electrified vehicles. So roughly 800,000 vehicles are driving on the roads worldwide with components and solutions from Bosch. And this year only we spent 1 billion euro in connected solutions. So that's on the cutting edge. On the common, I think on the common it's about affordability, and it's about public and for everyone. So the public and for everyone, that means I think this should be a non-negotiable for India to really spend into infrastructure. And infrastructure, I mean roads in cities, in rural areas, I mean of course also metros, but I mean as well into infrastructure that is helping digitization further on for the country. Affordable means finally that it must be scalable. Affordable means it must be produced locally in India. It must be a solution for India based on robust technology that is adapted for the country. And for this, let's say, some areas will take still a little time, to my mind. Clean, very important. Clean is the main purpose of BS6. And BS6, which is coming up now in the near future, will drastically change the air quality in Indian cities. And we know that 80% of the big cities have a huge problem with emissions, specifically on the particle matters. So with BS6, introduction of a diesel particle filter, this will not anymore play a role. I just take a city like Stuttgart, data from 2013, so when BS5 or Euro 5 in that case was introduced, only 6% of the emissions in Stuttgart, which is well known for its dust alerts, are coming from tailpipe emissions, so from particles out of a combustion engine. And we know that compared to Delhi, Stuttgart city has a far lower, let's say, level of particles already. So just 6%. So with BS6, particle matters will not play a major role anymore. But we as an industry, we do very well, to my mind, if we take the emission criteria and the limits not only serious for the cycles, but prepare already today for the real driving emissions. I think the panel members from the earlier discussion, they mentioned pretty clearly that the combustion engine has a bad reputation. And it's got this bad reputation because what is happening in the field is not what is happening on the dyno itself. So for the future, I think that India needs a tech-agnostic, firm roadmap for the emissions and for the CO2, which is playing also a very important role. And by the way, with all the NOx discussion happening in Europe and in Germany, nobody is speaking anymore about CO2. And for the first time, we see a rise in CO2 in average, since less diesels are being sold, EVs are not taking up, and gasolines are being bought by the customers. So having a clear, firm approach also for CO2 based on a well-to-wheel approach. Congestion-free, convenient, and connected, I don't touch too much because to my mind this is very much linked to public transport, to be very honest, and to provide here a seamless experience to the customer. I'm living in Bangalore, so if I would take the bus to get from A to B, I have to take a ticket for the bus, then I have to take a ticket for the metro, then I have to take another ticket for the bus. So that's anything but convenient, and I think a, let's say, digital country, digital nation like India can do far better on that one. The final one is a charged. Mr. Cuenca, you were asking on the prices for oil. You were not asking on the prices for battery, because that is coming to my mind if you speak about charged. It's about infrastructure, but coming back to the tech agnostic, if you speak about charged, turbocharger is also charging and air is free.
Thank you, and interesting remarks there. Dr. Saravanan, your initial thoughts, remarks on the theme of the panel discussion. You are the sole OEM representative as well, the commercial vehicle industry rep.
I think, good evening. First of all, thanks for it's a privilege to be here in this forum. As the sole OEM, as you said, again as Indian OEM, I think we all realize the fact that we may not agree with the policies of the government, we may not agree with the push they're giving in terms of EVs. The reality is we have the most polluted cities in the world, some of the most polluted cities, the most congested cities. Luckily, we also have the lowest penetration of personal ownership of vehicles. How are they linked? I'm a strong believer in the fact that if you actually can think of a paradigm shift where you have a shareable public transport that is connected, yeah, and it's clean, you have a situation where you can not only take care of clean cities, you can take care of congestion, at the same time take care of in terms of good public transport. While my colleagues in passenger vehicle will not like it, I think it is we've come to a point where I think if we invest in the right public transport with the right technologies, I think we can solve most of the problems that we're talking about in terms of. Yeah. Rather than dwell on the 7 Cs, I thought I'll spend a little bit more time on my perspective on where I see the 7 Cs, or what is the impact of technology going forward. I think one of the things that we look at is technology. While the technology is out there, whether it's in terms of batteries or motors, electrification, and so forth, I think we still have to continue to look for technology that is unique for India. I don't think we can afford to bring in technologies that are out there, whether it's technology in terms of batteries or even technologies of architecture. I'll give you an example. I think some OEMs have already tried out technologies like swap batteries. They're not worked out. But I think rather than saying they will not work in India, given the fact that the initial cost of ownership is a big factor in India, we have to continue to look at alternate technologies, alternate way of doing things. One such example is looking at like a swap battery for buses or even trucks, why not? I think it is that innovation streak we have to continue. We should not fall into the trap of saying that let's do what everybody else is doing. I think that is one important point we should keep in mind. I think the second point, I think, which sometimes this is what I feel very strongly about, this electrification and the connected vehicles actually makes the whole world flatter. What I mean is, for example, if you take diesel technologies, it took OEMs in India 30, 40 years to figure out what is going on, how to build the good diesel engines, how to build good transmissions. My strong belief is when you take electrification, especially whether it is the battery technologies, whether it is the motor technologies, I think the Indian OEMs are almost the same level playing field as most major European OEMs and American OEMs. So it's an opportunity for Indian OEMs, Indian engineers, to figure out how is that we can make a similar or even better technology in these new areas. I think this is opportunity for a lot of OEMs that don't have technology in terms of diesel to be able to leapfrog. Third is, since the barrier to entry is low, I also see a significant competition coming in. If it is in terms of making buses or trucks, significant competition from even simple bodybuilders. That's one level. If you look at connected and so forth, you also have significant competition with a lot of startups. So I think I see a significant competitive pressure for existing OEMs, including tier 1 suppliers, including OEMs. I think the bottom line is we have to be open to new ideas. We have to be frugal in approach. We have to be open to more competition. I think if we do all this right, we will have probably a right solution for India. But I think we'll spend more time on the discussions after this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saravanan. I think when it comes to frugal solution, I think Ashok Leland has demonstrated with the IEGR in the transition from BS3 to BS4 on how, just as an example of Indian ingenuity, so to speak. Alexander, your thoughts on the future of mobility around the seven seas?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, first of all, as the last speaker, you always have the challenge not to repeat too much of what has been said before. So I try to make it short. What to me is always impressive when you hear OEMs, premium OEMs, considering themselves as mobility providers and not only car manufacturers anymore. That means when we are talking about mobility, we are not talking only about automotive. And yeah, the colleagues have mentioned that before. Public transport is a key solution for many cities. Imagine Paris in Europe or Tokyo or other cities without a subway. That would never work. So this mobility, where you're not driving yourself, like subways, like robo-taxis, like people movers, this would already be, in my opinion, a good base to get, let's say, traffic problems solved or traffic problems improved. But of course, we are talking here about automotive, and therefore, from automotive perspective, I think we all agree that there will not be the only one solution that fits all. There will be battery cars, there will be autonomous driven cars, there will be hybrid cars, there will also be still combustion engine cars, depending a lot on infrastructure, on population densities, depending if you are in a city, living in a city, or if you're somewhere outside. So we will see more and more different technologies. And what does that mean for the OEMs, but also for the suppliers? It is adding complexity. It is making our portfolios broader. And that's what I want to emphasize a little bit, what kind of a challenge that is. So either we find smart ways to manage that complexity, or we have to take decisions in order to say, okay, this is technology I count on, and the other one I don't believe in. But this is really a problem or a challenge. The alternative to wait is definitely not given. So we have to move. For us at ZF Friedrichshafen AG, we have a very broad portfolio, and we still try to offer almost all technology to serve all needs that we see on the horizon. And to cope with that, I mean, the challenge and the possibility, on the other hand, we have in order to provide these products is to make them smarter, to make them more versatile, to make them flexible. Let me just allow to mention one example that we are showing here on our booth. We have a new rear suspension concept also out in a car, where we try to really show that suspensions, but also other technologies, can be made in a way that they support different technologies. So we can, for instance, incorporate electric differential, we can have a standard differential, we can combine air springs and standard springs, so we can serve entry needs and more sophisticated needs. And this is, let's say, one way how we can try to cope with these future challenges. As I said, there will not be the only one solution that fits all needs.
Thank you, Alexander. In fact, now that takes us to the next part of our panel discussion, which is, would like to, if I may ask the first question to Uehara-san. You made an interesting presentation and you said that Toyota can contribute to the Prime Minister's concept of 7 Cs. Can you tell us how does Toyota plan to bring or incorporate it in its strategy in India?
As listed in my presentation, we have tested, we have done some kinds of the demonstration test in Toyota City with running the small EVs for the 1 or 2 persons, and also the large size electric or fuel cell buses, and with a vehicle-to-vehicle connection and so on. So in very small Toyota City, we have already accumulated some amount of the data, and then also we have started to analyze them, and also thinking about how to make the more convenient society for the citizens. So this kind of the our accumulation can contribute to the India's society according to Prime Minister Modi's 7 Cs.
Thank you. Prashant, if I may ask you, of the 7 Cs, at least in the India context, would you agree that clean and congestion-free are the 2 most important Cs among the 7? And how can these, what steps should be taken to achieve these objectives at a very rapid pace?
Certainly, India is set to implement BS6 in 2020. So while we do this, it's also very important for us to have a policy in terms of scrappage. So otherwise, you will not be able to fully realize the effectiveness of having implemented the BS6. So that's one, certainly is going to be one important thing in terms of getting this change.
Mr. Roll, your views on the C of clean and C's of clean and cutting edge, developing, as you mentioned, technologies, cutting edge technologies would be very, very important to achieve the objectives of the future mobility. And Bosch has a huge R&D base in India. Could you throw some light on how, what kind of cutting edge technologies are being developed out of India, for example?
Yeah, so first I would reiterate that BS6 is the need of the hour, and that the industry is very well advised to take this ultra serious. And every money that is invested into an ICE with BS6 is, to my mind, very well invested money, not only globally but specifically for India. What we are doing in India, we are having a hub of 18,000 engineers working on future solutions, be it now for clean technology or be it for mobility all over. So it's the largest engineering hub worldwide outside of Europe. And of course, we are also looking into what is, to my mind, a big hype in the moment on the electric vehicles for India, with solutions that are adopted for the Indian market, which has some very specific requirements with regards to robustness features, but still banking on solutions that have been developed worldwide. If I look on the EV, there are, to my mind, just 3-wheel motivators why the industry is currently driving so much into that direction. And the last one is, by the way, the buyer of a car, because he simply doesn't care. But where he cares a lot for is that he is allowed to drive his car wherever he wants to. So the first motivators is city bans. The second motivator is the CO2 target, which are getting more and more stringent in Europe, and we are currently discussing on the CO2, which will be in 2020 95 gram per kilometers, and minus 30% out of these 95 gram per kilometers. So that's a very big motivator in itself. And the third one is China, because China just has an extra market. If we want to go really clean and in addition want to, let's say, save the world from the climate catastrophe, the only solution is the one that Dr. Grebe already pointed out, that we go towards synthetic fuels. And here, India has a huge opportunity, to my mind, with the abundance of solar hours and this very, very strict move towards photovoltaic or solar power, which has to be stored, and chemical storage would be the optimal solution. So it's a mix, to my mind, while the combustion engine, be it diesel, be it a gasoline, be it a hybrid solution, is offering enough potential for India, but for both CO2 and emissions, while electric vehicles will take some time to break through.
Yeah, that also reminds me, Dr. Denner's statement that the vision of Bosch is to come up with solutions in the near future, maybe by 2020 or so, wherein the emission from IC engines is negligible. That's the kind of vision that Bosch is working at. Alexander, from a perspective of safety, the 7 Cs, if I may add an 8th C, which is collision-free. Could you tell us in terms of what are the steps, what are the technologies that ZF is working on to make really mobility, the future of mobility, collision-free, and it's maybe their application or the offering of those solutions in India?
Yeah, when it comes to avoiding collisions or driver fatalities, of course, we, like some of our competitors, are investigating this. And quite soon we will see such technology on the market. But also here, it doesn't fit for everywhere. It will come by step. I think everyone agrees to that. So first, probably in geo-fenced areas where there's no other vehicles around. So you just have to avoid that you don't hit pedestrians or bicycles. There's no cross traffic. Then you maybe go on highways where the situation is not as complex as here, the inner city traffic in Chennai. And don't ask me how many years from now systems will be capable of handling city traffic in India. This is probably the most complex challenge that I can imagine. And it has to do also with, let's say, education, that people are following the rules. That has to start in the early years in school. So we are talking probably about a next generation of people who can benefit from that. But maybe one remark to the discussion before, the cleanliness of this initiative. Of course, we can bring battery electric cars on the market which are clean in cities, but that doesn't really help if you produce the dirt elsewhere. So the initiative, what Mr. Royal said, is exactly right. It does work only with renewable energy. So wind, solar power, everything else. And there, the OEMs, but also the suppliers, also depend, let's say, on politics. Politics has to drive, let's say, by law that more and more renewable energy will be produced. And in Germany, we are amazingly quite successful with that. So the portion of wind energy has been increased by 20-30% during the last years. And here, India definitely has a lot of potential. And if we can manage that, to get, let's say, the solar power, either via the wind and electricity, into the tank, then we have clean mobility. Otherwise, yeah, we are clean in cities, but we are producing the dirt elsewhere, and that should not be the strategy.
Dr. Saravanan, as an Indian OEM with a history, I mean, Ashok Leyland recently celebrated its 70th anniversary. If you take a kind of a little bit of a crystal ball gazing, 5 years down the line, or even 10 years down the line, if that's the time horizon, which of these Cs do you see being the most prominent on Indian roads? And which are the areas that Ashok Leyland is focusing on?
I mean, I wish I could crystal gaze that far, but I think my perspective is based on coming from one of the largest bus manufacturers. I definitely, in the next 10 years, see a fairly good penetration. Don't ask me what fairly good means. Good penetration of EVs or clean technology-driven, powertrain-driven technologies in the bus segment, particularly in the city bus, intra-city bus segment. I think that will probably help not only in being technology, but also in terms of making cities cleaner. As he said, it's not all due to vehicle, but anyway, it will make it a little bit better. Also improve congestion. The other segments where I potentially see electrification coming in, at least from our perspective, commercial vehicle would be the smaller pickup vehicles, smaller LCVs, again, intra-city routes. Then that probably followed by slightly bigger trucks. Finally, maybe 15, 20 years down the road, I think would be when you will see the longer distance, long haulage trucks coming into. And that's again driven by the current technology in terms of batteries. The larger trucks can't afford to lose so much weight and volume just to electrify, because I mean these customers work based on total cost of ownership. So I think, is everything going to flip tomorrow? No. I think 5 years down the road, you'll start seeing a lot more electric buses, a lot more, maybe two-wheelers. I can see that, a lot more three-wheelers coming into the segment. Maybe 10 years down the road, you'll probably start seeing a little bit better penetration in terms of EVs. From an AL perspective, again, we're focusing on buses and smaller trucks at this point. I think let's see how the technology goes, how the penetration happens, and then we will go to other segments.
Thank you. It's clear that even the previous session and this, the clean mobility, the C of the C for clean mobility is the top priority, and rightly so. And but due to paucity of time, we would like to throw the floor open for questions. Yes, kindly raise your hand, and who is it for? Can I have a mic here, please? Kindly introduce yourself and mention who the question is for.
My name is Irfan Hanif. I am working with automotive industry OEMs. My two questions. One, Japan or India, unfortunately, we have again a common issue of natural calamities. Okay, we take tsunami or flood or even last month also we have experience in other South Asian countries. So keeping this as a reality, so what, how confident, or if at all there is a complete transition, will this be a alarming, a cautious factor? Because when complete power is going off, even for charging we are talking about the connectivity. So when the flood was hitting in the neighboring state last month, so the petrol gensets or diesel gensets or the vehicles were kept running for charging the mobiles for connectivity. So in this situation, so what can be the maximum permissible portion allowed for a complete switchover for an electric related mobility? I hope you got the point. That is one point. That's mainly on the survival part. That's number one. Second thing is on the societal impact. there are a number of people on the social strata who are surviving on the aftermarket business, okay, whether it's authorized workshops, spares, okay, likewise. So what can be there, how as an industry leaders, what is our take on these 2 points? One is on the survival part in terms of a calamity or anything, and another on the social impact, societal impact. Mainly on their livelihood and I mean, it's.
I think in terms of infrastructure, you're raising the right points, and that's going to be the big challenge. I mean, that is even true of now, without with or without natural calamity. If you look at the kind of power requirements, if you actually talk about 50% penetration rates in vehicles, it is quite large. So that challenge remains. The challenge of what happens in natural calamity, I think we have to put in place backup solutions. I mean, I'm not sure what those are at this point, but the point you raise is quite valid. But we also, the natural calamities are not that happens every day. I mean, it happens probably more often you have, but I think that's something that we have to look at. But the fact, even without natural calamities, there are a lot more things to be done from an infrastructure perspective for actually to make this a reality. Yeah.
Yeah, we are almost we have run out of time. Any last question there?
My name is Rakesh Verma from IIT Madras. We heard a lot about future. My concern is current. What happens to all the cities in India which are choked? Will they wait till 1920 onwards, or they have a solution to offer today?
Can you repeat the question? It was not very clear.
We have been hearing a lot about future. What happens if the current situation is so bad that it may not last the future? You see the cities, they are so choked, people suffer from respiratory problems. If the new norms cut in a year or two later, so much mass polluted will still be around because the vehicles are around. So what do you do?
So, certainly that's a priority, clean, safe and connected mobility. As I already told you, when it comes to clean, yes, we are migrating to BS6, but unless we come out with a policy in terms of scrapping the old vehicle, we'll not be able to fully realize the impact of having implemented the BS6, certainly. So that's one example. The other one in terms of safety. So India is also known for a lot of fatal accidents. So glad that government has now implemented ABS, both for 125cc and above motorbikes, as well as 100% the passenger cars. And there was a welcome move from government last week during the Stop the Crash event. So they also made a sort of announcement that they are contemplating in terms of implementing ESC. So ESC becomes the basic architecture for implementing any of the ADAS functions, basic ADAS functions like maybe unique solutions for India like pothole detection or a hump detection or a blind spot detection or even for the emergency brake assist. So these are some of the things. So before that we need to have. So these are some of the actions certainly we should be looking at implementation going forward.
My suggestion was that present...
I'm sorry, we have run out of time.
Okay.
But these the distinguished panelists will be available offline to have a quick discussion. Yeah, you have one question, Dr. Yes, please.
There is some time. Is there?
One.
Okay, so
we'll make one.
I really don't want to ask a question, and I want to put it. I don't know how to put it because I don't want to offend anybody either. We had 5 panelists here, 4 before that. And the view that's coming out from these panelists and also most of us is that things are fine. They'll continue to improve a little bit. The ICE engines are going to be here. EVs will come, but sometime in future. Sustainable is BS6 or clean is BS6. Affordable is public transport. Disruptive is maybe 2% reduction in CO2. And I will say the same thing. If I'm sitting in the panel, I won't say anything different. Are we just being too hardened in our thinking and not really thinking in a real disruptive manner. Are there young people, startups sitting somewhere right now thinking that the auto industry in the world is a sleeping giant right now, and let's come and attack it and unseat them? Is something really going to happen that we are not thinking about? And I just want us to be a little bit more paranoid about what future might be and think very differently. So if I was to put all of us together, it doesn't create a picture that in 2025 or 30, things will look very different, right? Is that the right picture? And again, I'm saying, I will say the same thing. I'm not going to say anything different. But I just want to question this, that are we thinking disruptive enough to see how the industry might really be different from today? And is there somebody else who's going to come from behind and attack the industry, and new set of suppliers will come, and new set of OEMs will come, and the current OEMs and suppliers will wonder what happened? So that's just a paranoia situation I just want to put on the table.
No, indeed, Dr. Goenka, I think you're absolutely right. Perhaps is the industry not thinking something which somewhere some youngsters are sitting and kind of plotting some new ideas. We have already seen in some cases, especially in the electric mobility and or even in autonomous startups where we have never heard of, and coming up with some innovative ideas. Indeed, that's wonderful food for thought to end this panel discussion with, the last event of this of today. So on that note, I would like to really express my deepest gratitude to the distinguished panelists here. Thank you very much for sparing your time and being here, and the lovely audience here. Thank you very much for your participation. It indeed was a pleasure for me to be the moderator of this session. And on behalf of Autocar Professional, I would like to once again thank you all. Thank you very much, and all the best.
Thank you, Mr. Shumantra. May I request the moderator of this session to present the mementos to our distinguished panelists, Mr. Alexander, Director ZF AG Germany, Mr. Jan Oliver, CTO Executive Vice President, Bosch Limited, India, Mr. Prashant Doreswamy, Managing Director, Continental Automotive, India, Dr. N. Saravanan, Senior Vice President, Ashok Leyland Limited, Mr. Takashi Hoera-san, Chief Engineer, Toyota Motor Corporation. And I would like to invite Dr. Arvind Bharadwaj, Steering Committee Chair, to present the memento to our moderator, Mr. Shumantra Baroha. Thank you, Dr. Arvind. Thank you, Shumantra. And thanks to all our panelists for the wonderful discussion. This concludes the first day of FISITA 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us at FISITA World Automotive Congress.